Well, hello, everyone. Glad you could join us today or whenever you're watching this, day, night, weekend, whatever. But uh, actually, go ahead if you're watching this on Facebook to like the Facebook page and share it. If you're watching this on YouTube, ring that bell, subscribe, and Rumble. Go ahead and subscribe as well, and follow us and share the videos that you're watching. Should be very informative information. So tonight, and hopefully a few more times at least, I've got my good friend Tilman Goins, who used to be county commissioner here in Hamilton County, and then he represented Hamilton County, which was District 10. If is that correct?
Correct.
District 10 covered all of Hamilton County. Now it's been split up. So, but Tilman represented District 10 as a state representative in Nashville up until what, 2018 or 16?
18, I believe.
Hey, yeah, 2018. We served 6 years.
6 years, 3 terms.
Yeah, 3 terms. So he served 3 terms, 6 years in the state legislature as our state representative. And so I've got him on here. We're going to talk about the getting started in the legislative session and what goes on, filing bills, whatever. We'll probably break this up in several parts over several interviews and go from there. So with that said, Tilman, take off.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for preemptively roping me in for many, many more of these. So that's that's good. But honestly, we have been friends for a long time, and we'll do as many of these as you want to. You're easy to talk to, Charles, and I really do appreciate our friendship and the opportunity to maybe try to help educate folks over how the thing really goes down, how it really works.
Right.
You know, it's funny when I run for re-election and you run on a set of principles saying, or election or re-election, you run on a set of principles to say, hey, I believe in limited government and that we have a representative form of government and this and that. Then as soon as you get elected, some of those same people who think just like you said, hey, now that you're elected, can you do this for me? Or can you make this happen? Or can you do that? Well, it's not that easy. And you didn't elect a dictator. I'm one of 99 representatives at the state house. And so a lot of people don't really understand what it really takes to get things done or to get things passed at the state level. So I'm glad to share my experience, though it was limited to 3 terms. Glad to share my experience and anything that I took away with your viewers. So thank you.
Right.
Of course, I did start at the county commission, and I think that's about the time that we met, probably, when I was gearing up for the county commission, and you lived in my district. That was District 4 in Hamilton County. Yeah. I fought a hard-fought campaign and ended up going up against a guy that had been in for 20 years, won by 4 votes.
Yep.
And was in my first term when I decided to run for state representative. Honestly, didn't know that I was going to win. Didn't suspect I was going to win at the beginning of the race, but I thought the fellow that was in there needed some good, honest competition. So I threw my name on the ballot, and the campaign kind of took on legs of its own. So when I got in, I thought, well, surely some of the folks in Morristown are going to try to recruit a candidate to run against me and primary me in 2 years, but they didn't. Right. I consider it actually a great honor that nobody ran against me those times. So I was able to go 2 more terms without any opposition at all, which was the best way to run if you're going to run a campaign, is to be unopposed. Yeah. But I really did, like I said, take that as an honor. And when I first got elected, and I remember on election night, and you were there too at the courthouse, still a little bit in disbelief. I mean, I'd kind of gotten a sense early on in the night, on election night, that I had done well. When the early vote totals came in, I had kind of had a wide enough margin of victory in the early votes to feel confident going in, and I showed up there at the courthouse. But my night really began when I got a phone call from the governor and the Speaker of the House then, Beth Harwell, congratulating me on a win. And I think I could kind of tell on the phone that it was a phone call they weren't expecting to have to make that night too. Right. And of course, since then, I've seen some of the polling numbers that was done early on in the campaign, and I think I can understand why they wouldn't have expected to make that phone call. But we did, with help of folks like you, probably a lot of your viewers helped along the way, and some other like-minded Hamilton County residents. We were able to get in there. So I took that phone call, that congratulatory phone call that first night, and the very next day, I started getting phone calls from 98 other state, maybe even just the ones that were Republicans or had an R behind their name, started calling the next day, trying to feel me out, figure out who I am, where I stood on some of the issues, because sometimes it's not always the same as what you campaign on. You can campaign on those things that mean something to somebody locally, but they want to know how I feel about the things that are important to them. So they'll call, they'll try to be friends really fast. They'll try to figure you out, um, offer you office space if you need office space. They'll offer you opportunities to go meet them for lunch. And I did a lot of that because it became a big networking thing between then and orientation. So I tried to meet as many of the local representatives surrounding the area as I could on a one-on-one basis, because you have to stand together as a team to do things for your region. Set a date to do an orientation and went up to Nashville, got to meet with the Speaker of the House in person, meet with the staff that would be helping. They give you an opportunity at that time to start looking who would be your staff member, which really does mean a lot when you're in the legislature. And so you get to pick your own staff. And of course, the governor's people goes through and introduces you to all of the liaisons for all the various departments so that you know who you need to reach out to. If you've got a problem with roads, you call that TDOT liaison. If state roads, you call the TDOT liaison. If you've got a problem with whatever board, you figure out who the liaison is over that particular board with commerce and insurance, and they're the ones that can help you get things done. So if a constituent were to call with an issue over a used car lot that they thought was doing something inappropriate or illegal, just as an example,
Right.
then you know who to call. And if there is any kind of oversight or authority, you can kind of try to tip them off and they can help. Or sometimes it's things that people had an issue trying to get set up with a program that they felt that they deserved or were warranted under the law. Then you knew how to connect them and they could try to help things move along if they were indeed deserving of that program. So that was the first part of it, was just all this big whirlwind of the logistics of, well, the logistics, not just where the bathrooms are and where your office is and all of that, but how do you begin to navigate the bureaucracy inside of government? Who can you call? What is the best way to get things done? And honestly, the best way that I learned was sitting back that first year and watching, okay, this is the person with the title, but who is the person that actually knows how to get things moving? If there's, I was in office, for example, when that interchange at Exit 8 was being redeveloped, and there were some moratoriums on new building going on up at Exit 8.
Mhm.
And long after the pavement was down and everything was done, those moratoriums on building and new construction were still in place for no reason at all, just other than the fact that they'd forgotten to sign off on it. And so I was able to reach out to the right people to say, well, there's a lot of development that's about to take place up here with a couple of restaurants and a couple of gas stations. How can we get this moratorium lifted? And you talk to the right person, and within 24 hours, that moratorium gets lifted.
Right.
You talk to the wrong person and they don't know, then you kind of get put on the back burner. Maybe they're afraid to ask around. And so that's how you can really get things done, to try to get the bureaucracy out of the way. And
Yeah.
by the way, there is a lot of bureaucracy up there to
Mhm.
deal with. And I think we're going to talk a lot more too about how the bureaucracy tends to stand in the way sometimes too, or use that same expertise to try to stand against or go against initiatives that might have been sometimes constituent driven initiatives or laws or bills that we try to get passed. So while they can be very, very helpful at times, they also can try to do their best to try to thwart anything that you're trying to do for your constituents. So I just don't want you to think that I'm just completely trying to build them up. But
Right.
early on, they're very much your friends. They're very much on your side. That's politics, but also that's how things get done. You build relationships with folks. You know where to go. You take it for what it is. If it's something that's reasonable and understandable, you go to them and you try to get things taken care of that need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So orientation was a big part of that. And the governor had his own orientation.
Yeah.
And then we sit down. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to interrupt you there. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
but
anytime. This is your show.
that's one of the things that I want to do a whole separate video on is the administrative part of government and what you and I have had this conversation.
Mhm.
Okay. You've been in the politician role. I've worked in the activist role, and so I want to talk about like when you do have a good bill and it is what the people want and it benefits the people, but how that administrative side pushes back, even to say, hey, we're going to work, we're going to fight you on this and you'll be gone and we'll still be here.
Well, and not a spoiler alert for when we do get to that conversation. That's the reason why at one point, and I term limited myself, so I'm happy saying this. I know that there are a lot of folks that are dead set on term limits for the legislative side. I think I'm proof that when you're not doing a good job, because the person before me did get term limited by the voters when they put me in,
Right.
term limits exist at the ballot box. And if you've got legislators flipping over every 6, 8 years before they even really learn the systems and how the system works, but those bureaucrats that are there for 20, 30, 40 years that have the ear of the governor or the governor's cabinets, or even at the federal level, right, of the president and the president's cabinet members, you got those entrenched mid-level bureaucrats there that are really pulling the strings in many, many cases, because nobody's going to tell that person with the experience that they don't know what they're talking about. So you're really weakening the people if you weaken the people's representative voice in the legislature, and you're strengthening the bureaucracy when you're leaving them unchecked, and you don't have enough people with experience to know when the bureaucracy is trying to pull one over on them or trying to BS their way through getting a bill killed that they don't like.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand it. A lot of those people are nothing for those. A lot of those administrative offices and departments have paid lobbyists that work the legislature and try to keep themselves active and well funded and everything else, and keep good bills from limiting them as well. But like I said, that'll be a separate video. I want to focus completely on that because I think there's some great information on that. So, but go ahead and finish up before I interrupted you there.
Yeah, that's all right. And so I'll go ahead and say this too. So when you're a new legislator, and you get, I mean, they try to put you on committees that kind of fit your background. So I was a business owner. I was put on the Business and Utilities Committee. Well, I was an air traffic controller. So when I was speaking with the Speaker of the House about committee assignments, and I said, I really don't want to be on that local government, even though I came from the county commission. I don't want to be on that committee that deals with local governments that much. But I guess I could do transportation because I've got some aviation experience from the air traffic control side. And so she was kind enough to actually put me on the committees that I requested going in. But when you're new on these committees sometimes, and you don't know the ins and outs. It's your first year of getting a road built. What does it cost to pave a road? What are the logistics that go in behind stopping or whatever it is? Most people, our instinct is to listen to the folks that we think are the experts. And so when you've got a panel full of folks that work for the Tennessee Department of Transportation sitting in front of you, explaining to you why you can't do something that you think is an initiative, most people are going to tend to try to follow the experts, you know? And so, I mean, one of my favorite sayings used to be, stop telling me why you can't do something and work with me to figure out how we can.
Right.
Logistics aside, the hurdles aside, let's figure out how we can get there. Because I'm pretty sure JFK, when he says we're going to put a man on the moon, if he would have sat back and said all the reasons under that conventional science at the time of why they couldn't put someone on the moon, he would have given up. He said, no, we're going to stop listening to the reasons why we can't, and we're going to figure out how we can. And so I used to say that all the time when I was in Nashville. But again, that's most folks will sit back and say, well, we have to listen to the experts on this. So when I'm battling for a bill for my constituents, oftentimes it was against those people who were deemed the experts.
Yep.
But anyway, sorry to jump ahead there.
No, you're absolutely right. And you hear that here in the local level as well. You know, oh, we got to listen to the experts, and then, listening to the experts is how they cover themselves when they do things. And it about 95% always goes wrong. And they said, well, we listened to the expert. And,
Is that how you get a swimming pool built that's a little too short to hold swim meets at it so that people won't come into Morristown?
yeah,
Or is that how you get a brand new brick sign leading into your downtown that they forgot to put the name of the city on?
yeah,
It just says welcome to downtown. It doesn't say the name of the city on the sign.
yeah.
Or is that how you is that how you get a new farmer's market that one side is too low because of the hill for the truck to actually pull underneath it? It's going to hit the roof if it backs up too far
Yeah,
because they're listening to the experts.
because they listen to the experts, and we're wasting money. And and then I talked to a guy today that's I had to correct him because he was talking about all the free money we get from the federal government.
Free?
Free. And
I don't know. Hey, the day that we're recording this is exactly 1 month away from tax day. So
right. Yeah. So we're 1 month away, and we're talking about free money from the government, and it's part of Biden's spending bill. So what's inflation going up? And we're talking
7.9% in the last year is the official numbers that were put out, but I don't think they were calculated right. It's probably closer to 15%, to be honest.
yeah. And so we're talking about free money at the local level from the feds. So anyway, back to what we said.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you're getting me off on that tangent of that. I mean, for even folks that don't pay in taxes regularly because they're below the income levels, when inflation hits them at 8%, they've lost 8% of their buying power, 8% of their wealth. And that's a tax hit. That's more than that. I mean, you're losing. You can put money into a savings account, and if you're lucky enough, get 1% interest. But if inflation's 8%, you're losing 7%.
Yep.
Yeah, if your investments aren't keeping up with inflation, you're losing money.
Yep. So
sorry. Yeah, but that's not why you had me on. I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about that. I just anyways, so
but it ties into what you're saying, and that all falls into the politicians and stuff. And when he said that to me today, I was just like, when I called him on it, he said, I knew you was going to say something. I could see it in your eyes. So
you don't even have to see it in your eyes. Your eyes could have been closed. You can't make a comment like that and you not say anything, Charles. I've known you way too long. Of course you're going to say something, but people need to hear it.
Yeah.
Sometimes people believe it because they've been told one thing. And I hate to say it about conservatives. A lot of times we'll just be quiet. We won't really say anything. We were the silent majority when Reagan got put in office. It's oftentimes it's vocals on the left that try to frame the arguments and to try to frame the narrative around what we're talking about. And when conservatives are silent, for people who don't know any better or only tune in every once in a while, they're going to fall for that leftist narrative. That's why we've got to speak up. The
old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So
and I've known you to be that, but I appreciate that about you.
Just a little bit. So as a new legislator going in, and so what's the process for filing a bill?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Good. And this was something that was covered heavily in our actual legislative orientation, which was aside from our governor's orientation. So the first thing, any bill starts with an idea, whether it's an idea I have, whether it's an idea that a constituent has, or whatever. And we're fortunate enough to have, it's actually a really good set of attorneys because they've written most of the bills, so they know where to find things within Tennessee code. And sometimes things are cross-referenced. So if it's in one section, it's going to be referred to in another and another and another. My first step was always sitting down with legislative attorneys and saying, okay, this is the idea. How and where can I find this in the code, because it wasn't enough for me to just tell them what I wanted and let them handle it, because not that they weren't accomplished. If they didn't have the same set of ideals that I did, they might not have picked up on what I was really trying to accomplish. So many legislators would sit down with the legislative attorney and say, I think this needs to be a law, write it up. And they'll write it up in all their legalese and all the terms. I was a little bit different. I said, you show me where to find this, because I want to look at the language that's there and see along the way also, does any of this other language need, would it contradict? Does it need to come out? And I want to word it the best way I can.
Right.
But then I didn't, and so I would type up what I expected the law to look like was best I could myself. And then I would meet again with the legislative attorneys after they told me where something was located. Gun laws, for example, I could read the whole section myself. I could see what I thought needed to be changed to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. And then I would hand it back to them and say, okay, look over what I've written here and how would this incorporate to meet my goals or to meet our goals. And so then they would take it and bring back to me in a couple sets of folders, the actual draft language of that bill. And so it was up to me then at that point, if it was my idea, to go and find a Senate sponsor, because identical language has to pass in both the House and the Senate to become a law. And so that's when I would start finding like-minded senators that I thought might be able to pitch that particular bill the best way possible to get it passed on the Senate side. Because why I wasn't always successful at passing all of my bills on the House side, of course, I was confident in my own, I felt confident enough in my own abilities that I could probably lay out or argue those bills myself. So on the Senate side, I wanted to get somebody that understood the argument the same way I did. Sometimes it would be over lunch and say, hey, I've got a couple of bills that I think you would be a good Senate sponsor for. Let's talk about this. Sometimes those senators would bring me their bills and say, hey, I've got this idea and I need a House sponsor, and I think that you would be a good sponsor for this. You're someone who maybe knows the folks on that committee and can get some movement on it, get some traction on it. Or sometimes it was because I might have been a member of that committee and they thought that maybe being a member, I could get some movement or traction on their bills. And so it really was a lot of back and forth from the Senate and the House over, okay, who would be the best sponsor for this? Once I found my Senate sponsor and I had the bill, you sign it and you put it on notice, or you put it into the clerk's office to become filed. And that's the point where you can start seeing it on the internet and everything. There is a bill filing deadline that happens every year, and the House is limited to 15. Each House member is limited to 15 bills per year. And that's to limit the amount of work, because there are some House members that would file 40, 50, 60 bills per year, but we're limited. There's a limit to 15. Right. Whether it's our own or whether it's a Senate bill, it didn't matter. 15 bills was all we were supposed to be able to file per year. So once it got filed, it then sat there, and the way it's written, each bill has to go through 3 readings on the House. So the first 2 readings are procedural. If you're geeky enough like I am to sit and watch the House proceedings, you'll see they'll motion House Bill 001 through 150 on first consideration, and it'll be gavelled and it'll pass, no discussion, no objection, and it'll just go on through. So those first 2 readings are procedural. After that second reading, it's going to be assigned to a committee. So let's say it's a bill dealing with roads or road transportation, then it'll be assigned to the Transportation Committee. And once it's assigned to that committee, it's then incumbent upon me to go to that committee chairman and put my bill on notice, which is basically a form that says, hey, I would like to present my bill to your committee on the following committee date. Now there's 2 sets of committees. There's what's called the subcommittee, and there's what's called the full committee. Every bill will be heard through the subcommittee is comprised of a much smaller group of members of the full committee. Right. And lots of times, if there are objections to be worked out, or if there's amendments that need to be had, sometimes it's clerical amendments, but all of those things usually get worked out in that subcommittee. That's where most of the work gets done. And then it will go on to the full committee. Some additional discussion, because not all of those full committee members have been there. but it's expected to be a lot more clean of a bill by the time it gets there. And then, of course, if it passes the full committee, if there's a fiscal impact to that bill. So if let's say I had a road bill and it was to build a new road, and that new road was going to cost $5 million, it could cost $5. It doesn't matter. It's then going to be referred to the finance committee. Because it's going to have a fiscal impact upon the state. Positive or negative goes to the finance committee. And that's the finance committee is also the committee that does most of the budget work for the House or for the Senate. And so it goes through there because they do try to keep a running tab on if every legislator brings bills across that cost a lot of money, someone's going to have to account for that money being spent.
Okay.
So it's not a bad process, but I know you've got some follow-ups.
Yeah, I got a question.
All
So,
right.
so what does it mean when they say, all right, the bill passed the subcommittee, passed the full committee, but it's been put behind the budget?
All right. So, and it'll be put behind the budget typically in that subcommittee of the finance.
Okay.
Right. So anytime there is a bill with a fiscal impact, the priority of the finance committee is to first take a look at the governor's budget and what the governor's priorities and what the governor's budget spends. So the governor sends a budget proposal to the House and the Senate. House and the Senate debate it. If they're good with it, they'll approve the governor's budget. I was never there. So I served when Governor Haslam was governor. I was never there that there wasn't some monies that wasn't appropriated by the governor for various things. So there might have been some, for sake of this video, an extra $1 million worth of revenue. And so that $1 million worth of revenue was something that if they accepted every proposal of the governor and that all went through, there's $1 million left at the end. And that $1 million would often go towards various legislative initiatives.
Right.
So if I came up with that new road and it was $5 million, but the budget passed and there was only $1 million left in revenue, it's not getting funded.
Right.
But they'll put it behind the budget. But let's say that initiative that I had was a $50,000 initiative. That $50,000 again goes behind the budget. And there sits a pool of bills that have costs to them. And so after the governor's budget and the governor's proposal and the government's funded goes through, any of those monies that's left over, that's when the finance committee is going to begin. And that's what we call behind the budget. So after the budget's considered, now let's look at all those legislative initiatives and which one has the most support.
Right.
Sometimes maybe that means the support of the speaker. Sometimes it means the support of the finance committee. Sometimes what has the most support of all the members. So if I've got $50,000 that I want to try to get earmarked for a statue of David Crockett in downtown Morristown, and no other legislator cares about that, then it's probably not going to get passed. Right. Because there's a limited amount of funds, right? So, but if there is an initiative that has maybe a statewide impact that a lot of the other districts could benefit from, and if I argued it well enough to say, hey, my proposal to spend this extra $50,000 is more important than this other representative's proposal to $50,000, mine will win. But and will get funded. But if not, then mine's not going to get funded. And that's where the politicking, by the way, really happens too. Right. It's because those dollars are limited. You've got people with more leadership, more clout that have been there a much longer time that are able to say, hey, I did this for you last year, and now I might need this $150,000 thing for this park in my district this year, or whatever the case. But honestly, it really is a tiered system, the way they look at it too. They'll narrow it down whether it has something that would have a statewide impact versus a regional impact versus a local impact. And likely they're going to score those statewide impacts at a higher score when they're looking at spending what it is behind the budget.
Okay. Now my other question is, all right, legislative season is over. We go through the summer, but there's some good ideals of things that people want done. So your
Mhm.
constituent comes to you and says, "Hey, I've got this ideal about it's a hot button issue right now. They want something done. How soon could a bill be filed to address that issue? Does it have to be when the next session starts? Is that correct?"
Yeah, I mean, you could, so a session so each term is 2 years,
Right.
right? So I could, if say it's non-election year and it's June and the idea comes up, yeah, I can sit down and get the language drafted and I could have it submitted in June or July or
Okay.
August for to be, but now it won't get argued because we're not, they don't go back into session until January, right? It's the second
Right.
Tuesday in January. So yeah, they're not going to hear it until January.
Right. But you can go ahead and file the bill ahead of time.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Now there's something to be said about timing.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something that I would anticipate a lot of pushback from, then I'm not going to let it sit out there for 5 or 6 months, because what you do is you give other folks plenty of time to come up with arguments against said bill.
Yeah, like a civil asset forfeiture bill.
Yeah, I mean, why do I want it sitting out there for 6 months so that those that might be against such a thing would have all their ducks in a row? I will write it and I'll work on it. And what I'll do is I'll try to anticipate civil asset forfeiture. I would try to anticipate, okay, what are those negatives going to be? And then how can I overcome those
Right.
in committee? So when I'm arguing those things, I want to try to overcome those objections. And the longer I give the opposition time to formulate their arguments, the more solid their arguments are going to be.
Right. And the more time they have to lobby other legislatures on their arguments.
And they do hard. And I know that you probably know this. Civil asset forfeiture is one of those things where if I went up to John Smith and I said, "You're not going to believe this. You can get pulled over in Tennessee. And if you're on your way to the rod runs and you've got $10,000 cash in your glove box and you get pulled over for speeding and you open up the glove box to get them your proof of insurance or your registration and they see $10,000 because you're on your way to the rod runs to pick up a car and the cop sees that, the cop can say, whoa, they can take your $10,000 and they can say, we suspect that this was going to be used in a crime. No one carries $10,000 unless they're buying drugs.
Right.
And so we're going to seize this money because it might be potentially going to be used in a crime and we're going to keep it. Now, if you want it back, go get an attorney and fight for it back and prove that you're innocent.
Yep.
If you said that to the average person on the street, they say that's not in this country, not in America does that ever happen.
Right.
But it does. And it's a legal thing that police officers, and look, I'm all about back the blue and I support police officers, but the way the system is set up right now, some police agencies have this tool that hurts everyday citizens. I mean, and you can just Google it, look it up on YouTube, civil asset forfeiture. You'll see right here in Tennessee, there are stings set up. They'll pull people over driving nice cars just to see if there's any money in their car or whatever. You hear stories all day long about the Marine veteran out west who was driving to see a family member and didn't trust banks or didn't want to leave his money in banks and he had to go hire an attorney to try to get his money back when he was going to see it. And this was a Marine veteran. I can't remember his name, but it happens. It happens often. And it's happened in Tennessee, by the way, to someone that was on their way to the rod runs. And so when these bills would come up, every single time on the House floor, if anything, whether it was about reporting civil asset forfeiture or things like this, I would stand up on the House floor to whoever representative that was presenting said bill, and I would ask them, just kind of like I laid it out to you, is it legal to carry large amounts of cash? The answer is yes. Is it also legal for the police departments to seize that cash and make you prove you're innocent in order to get it back? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
And like I said, that's not a principle that I think that most Americans would agree with.
Right.
And I think it's actually something that most people don't think. I want to give law enforcement every tool they need to combat illegal, harmful drug use, or to be able to do their job in general, right? But I don't support a system that allows for this kind of backdoor seizures of personal property, something that's legal to own.
Right.
It doesn't have to be out of your car. It could be out of your house. It could be.
Yeah. I get it. Been in this fight for a while, so
I know.
and that's one thing I'll give you credit for. You carried our first bill on it, and so. And
Well, and so what happens? Because like I said, I support law enforcement, right? And I support those guys. They go out and defend us and patrol our streets, protect our neighborhoods. And so and most people want to do that, and then it becomes a political issue. Well, do you support law enforcement or not? When you have the Tennessee Department of Safety, and you've got the Sheriff's Association and the Police Chiefs Association, all standing up and fighting against any effort to end the practice of civil asset forfeiture, because, by the way, those monies go direct into the police departments in many cases, or because they're supposed to be earmarked for drug interdiction or whatever. So they're the ones that benefits from having that money. That affects their operational budget if you take that tool away from them. And so when they do that, other legislators who sit there and still don't understand the issue, if they haven't been exposed to the issue well enough to really understand it, they're going to support law enforcement every single time, and they're going to support those lobbying arms of the law enforcement officers every single time against civil asset forfeiture laws, or laws that do away with civil asset forfeiture. And it's sad. But
Yep. Actually had
but they're humans, right? They're people, and they're
Right.
infallible, and they look. And
well, but most of the pressure comes from it in the higher ups. You know what I'm saying? You actually do know this, and you've seen it, and I've seen it. But had a gentleman I know that helps candidates, and he was helping a candidate, and they filled out a candidate survey, and the lady was staunchly against civil asset forfeiture. That's wrong in this country, but she didn't support constitutional carry. And when asked why you don't support constitutional carry, her answer was, well, law enforcement's against it. What are you going to do when law enforcement comes to visit you on civil asset forfeiture then? You see. And so
right.
we have to look at it like that and make decisions on candidates when they're wishy-washy like that. You either stand for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or you don't. And so anyway, back to the bills, and we probably need to wrap this up. We're probably hitting 30 minutes now. So
Yeah, I'm sorry. I probably talked where I wasn't supposed
you're
to talk
fine.
on other issues. You can always edit it and just make a second video out of this.
Yeah, but anyway, so we've got to the going through orientation in your first year there, and submitting bills and stuff, and basically filing a bill and what the process goes through. It's they look at it, see how much money it's going to cost, and put this physical note on it, and all this and that, and all that stuff. And then, if it gets pushed behind the budget, and how the buddy system, and well, he don't play ball with us, so let's go with John's over here instead of Tilman's. Maybe we'll teach him, if he wants his done next year, he'll have to play ball a little bit better. And another video that I want to do, so I'm committing you to these already, is committee assignments, and committee chairs, and leadership positions, and how those are deviled out, even at the local county commission level. Who appoints those seats, how does the Speaker of the House get Speaker of the House? And then what the Speaker does, and how much influence does the governor have on these seats, and these committee chairs and stuff. So that's something I want to talk about later.
Happy to. In my 3 terms, I've served in leadership positions in the House. I served as a chairman of the Criminal Justice Subcommittee. I've also voted for the for Speaker all 3 times. So yeah, I'm game for all of that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's to give people the insight.
Yeah. And so, by the way, and I'll tell you, so I feel like when I was there, I was pretty effective at the especially once I really learned the inner workings of it. You get elected on a principle, right? But then you got to learn the mechanics. And I feel like I was effective getting things through that finance committee until my final year. When I announced that I wasn't going to run for re-election, they knew that I wasn't someone that was going to be able to help them that following year, or even for the rest of that year. I was dead in the water. And even things that ended up passing the following year that I supported, it didn't matter. I was no longer someone that was a part of that group of people that could either stand in somebody's way to make their bills happen the following year or not. So as soon as I announced I was done, not another bill passed.
Right.
I mean, I shot myself in the foot by announcing too early, was what I probably did. But
yeah,
but that goes to your point. If you can't help them, they're not going to help you.
Right. Exactly. And so I want to cover that too. I think there's a lot that people can learn from this, and help them get some things done here in Tennessee, because we know you can't always trust what you're being told, and especially if you've got a good bill that you and a group of people want done, you better find somebody who believes in it, who really believes in it. Don't go find somebody that you think, oh, he owes us a favor. If they don't believe in it, they're not going to fight for it.
If they can't argue it with the same passion,
Right.
People can sense that.
Right. And just because your buddy is chairman of a committee or a subcommittee doesn't mean that they're the right person to do it. So, all right. So anyway, we'll go ahead and end this for tonight, because I know we're running long, and people's only got so much time to watch videos. So, or they
when they saw me, they turned it off in the first couple of minutes. Sorry about that.
No.
No, you're trying to get your views up, not down.
Knowledge is people seek knowledge. So hopefully they'll be seeking that. And by the way, you get to Santa Claus there, and with the beard and all that. You're getting older like me, so you can see the gray and thinning. So, you'll be the old gray Santa Claus before you know it. So anyway,
just giving things out like a Democrat.
Yeah, Santa Claus. So anyway, so we'll go ahead and end this. Like I said at the beginning of it, like, subscribe, and share. And I appreciate it. Help me grow my podcast and get good information out to people. And I hope it's useful and something you can learn about our local and state governments. And because more and more people are waking up saying, hey, we've got a problem, whether it's the school systems and what the kids are learning, to their tax dollars, or their rights being violated. So anyway, so with that being said, I'll say good night or good day, whatever time you're watching it, and we'll catch you again in a few days, hopefully with another video. Thank you.